Good morning, traders. Today I present to you the new version V3.2 of the Advanced Risk Reward. With this tool, you will be able to decide how much money to risk per trade. In addition, the tool will calculate how many contracts to enter to risk that specified amount, regardless of the distance between your stop loss and the entry point. Likewise, it will set your ATM orders automatically at the target and stop levels of the tool. In this way, it does not matter what configuration your ATM strategy has, it will always be coordinated with the locations of the Advanced Risk Reward. If you have not yet fully understood the usefulness of this tool, below we will briefly explain its features. The detailed explanation will be presented after this quick introduction, so please do not stop watching the tutorial until the end. This tool includes three main operating modes. First, the simple mode. This mode allows us to use the tool in its simplest possible form. It will only show us a risk-reward tool with multiple target and stop ratios. We can decide how many target ratios and how many stop ratios we want to display. This is interesting for people who want to use it for backtesting or in a simple way. Second, the plus mode. Here the tool already begins to have a bit more utility. Plus mode starts calculating the number of contracts needed to lose a stipulated amount of money based on the distance from the stop loss to the entry point of the tool. We can configure a maximum number of contracts, make our ATM target stops be placed immediately at the tool's levels when a position is opened, and even fix the targets and stops so that they follow those levels if we modify them during the trade. Finally, in Pro mode, in addition to including all the characteristics explained in Plus, it adds price tracking. That is, the tool will begin to automatically move its entry point according to where the price is located at that moment. We can configure it to update on every tick or on every bar close. In addition, we can also select whether we want the stop to remain static according to the market structure or to be a fixed distance. We can stop the price tracking when a trade is initiated and, in this way, prevent it from continuing to move once we have already entered the trade. These are the three operating modes, and switching between each of them is very simple. You only need to press the mode button of the tool. Now that we have finished the quick explanation, we are going to go into detail on how to configure each of the features of this tool. I advise you to watch this part carefully, as it is very likely that all the doubts arising from the previous introduction will be answered here. To start, open the chart of the instrument where you will trade. Click on the drawing tools, the pencil icon at the top, and choose Advanced Risk Reward Bruno Meza. The first time you place the tool on the chart, the license will be validated. Then try again, and you will be able to use it normally. If we observe the tool, we will see a yellow dot at the bottom at the stop loss level. We will call this yellow dot the anchor, because if we click here and do not release it, we can extend and compress the tool's stop. Below, we will see an amount in dollars. This amount indicates the amount of money that is risked per contract from the entry point, yellow level, to the stop loss level, red level. Remember that it is per contract in that specific instrument. If we double-click on the anchor point, all the features of the tool that we can edit will open. We will begin by describing the options that we can adjust in simple mode. In this mode, we can enable or disable the quick access buttons that appear on the right side of the tool. If we do not want to see them, we simply uncheck the option. However, keep in mind that removing them will make it more difficult to switch to Plus or Pro. Then we have the options to show price levels and show ticks. If we want to see not only the amount of money we would lose per contract, but also the number of ticks in that distance, or what price corresponds to that level, we can activate those options. To simplify this tutorial, we will leave them deactivated. We can also position the text to the right or to the left, according to your preference. The interesting thing now is that we can set a specific number of target and stop levels. It is not necessary to have 5 target levels if you do not want to. You can have fewer or more by changing the number. In the same way, you can modify the number of stops. This is only a visual aspect for the moment. Do not assume that this will affect your ATM orders yet. Choose the desired number without worrying about that detail. We will see it later. If you want to modify the ratios of each level, you must go to Area D, Target Ratios, and Stop Ratios, where you can change the ratios of each level in order. Next, we will go into detail on the features of Plus Mode. These functions will begin to operate once you activate Plus Mode on the tool. Plus Mode enables the calculation of how many contracts you should enter to risk a previously established amount of money. To configure it, we have 2 calculation methods. Fixed value, where we directly set the amount of money in dollars that we want to risk per trade, or account percentage, where we indicate a percentage between 1 and 100. If you choose fixed value, you must enter the amount of money in dollars that you wish to lose, for example, $200. If you select account percentage, you will enter a value between 1 and 100. This will automatically calculate the amount to lose based on the account balance. For example, if you enter 1, you will be indicating that you want to risk 1% of the balance. If your balance is $100,000, 1% is $1,000, and therefore you would risk that amount per trade. 99% of traders use fixed value, and that will be the example we use. We will enter 200 in fixed value, which means that we want to risk $200 per trade, and the advanced risk reward will calculate how many contracts to enter to lose that amount. You will see a button activated by default called Update Contracts in the Chart Trader. This allows the tool to automatically modify the number of contracts in your chart trader without you having to do it manually. I recommend leaving it activated, as the update will only occur when you switch to Plus Mode. In this way, you do not have to worry about adjusting contracts each time you enter the trade. The next parameter is the maximum contracts. Some funding companies or brokers impose a limit on the number of contracts you can enter. Therefore, if you want to set a maximum number of contracts so that the tool never exceeds that limit, simply enter here the maximum contract value you want. If you do not want to configure it, leave it by default at a very high number, such as 999999. Next, we will find the option Place TPSL at the levels at the start of the trade, activated by default in Plus Mode. This means that the tool will move your ATM strategy's targets and stops when the trade starts, placing them exactly at the levels of the advanced risk reward. If you deactivate this option, the targets and stops will remain where you have them configured by default in the NinjaTrader ATM. Now, what happens if you do not want the first target to be placed at level 1 of the tool, but at level 2 or level 3? For that, there is the parameter Initial ATM Target Level, where you can choose at which level of the tool the first take profit should begin to be placed. The default value is level 1, but if you prefer it to start at level 2 or 3, you can adjust it here. In our example, we will leave it at level 1. Then we have the option Fix TPSL at levels on modifications, also activated by default. This means that if you modify the location of the tool during the trade, the targets and stops will move following those changes. If you disable this function, modifications to the drawing will not affect the ATM orders that are already placed. My recommendation is to leave it activated, as you can toggle this function live with the quick access button Fixed ATM On. If during the trade you do not want a modification to move the targets and stops, just deactivate it from there. And if later you want it to follow them again, reactivate it with the same button. Important, if you execute an order in the opposite direction to that of the advanced risk reward, for example, if you execute a short with the tool configured for longs, the advanced risk reward will not be able to adjust the targets and stops automatically. In that case, your ATM orders will be placed according to the default configuration of the NinjaTrader ATM. Finally, in Plus, we have the option OR, real objective. Sometimes the market does not allow you to risk exactly the desired figure. For example, you may want to risk $200, but the real value is 198 or 203. If you activate OR, you will see that real figure on the chart, both in the stop and in the take profit levels. If you do not wish to see this information, deactivate OR. You can also enable Show Objective to visually see the amount being risked and Show Equivalence to know how many contracts the tool calculates you should enter. Now let's move on to Pro Mode, which includes all the functionalities of Simple and Plus, plus the following features. Pro Mode enables price tracking so that the tool automatically moves its entry point as the market price changes. You can choose between On Tick, which updates the entry point with each price movement, or On Bar Close, which updates it at the close of each bar. Then you can choose how the stop loss behaves when the price moves, by structure, in which case the stop remains fixed and only the entry point moves, or by fixed distance, where the distance between entry and stop remains constant. You will also have the button Stop Tracking when a position is open, activated by default. This makes the tool stop moving as soon as you enter a trade. If you prefer that it continue adjusting during the trade, simply deactivate this button. Otherwise, my recommendation is to leave it enabled. Finally, to improve visibility, you can configure an offset of X bars. The tool will still base itself on the current bar, according to On Tick or On Bar Close, but it will be drawn a few bars back so as not to obstruct your visual field. Remember that you can modify the ratios of each target and stop level from target ratios and stop ratios, even with decimals, and customize the colors of the entire tool, including the quick access buttons. That already depends on your personal taste, so we will not go into further detail. To save all the changes and have them remain every time you place the tool again, click on Template and then on Save. Then, choose Save as Default and confirm if a replacement message appears. In this way, the next time you add the advanced risk reward to the chart, it will appear with the configuration you have saved. Next, we will show a live trade using the advanced risk reward so that you can see how it is used in practice. First, I place the advanced risk reward on the chart. Since I want to use the automatic contract calculation functionality for the established risk, I switch to the Plus version. At that moment, the tool already starts providing me with the number of contracts to risk for the established distance. When I am ready to execute a trade, I simply execute it, and the targets and stops are placed at the respective levels of my tool. Now, since the trade was executed at a slightly different point than where I thought it would be executed, I can adjust my tool to that point, and the targets and stops adjust automatically. Once everything is in order, I remove the fixed ATM so that I can freely move my targets and my stop loss. Finally, my trade ends very well. I can also make a trade using Pro Mode. As we already know, Pro Mode includes all the functionalities of Plus Mode, but with integrated price tracking. When I am ready to execute a trade, I simply execute it, and the targets and stops are placed at the respective levels of my tool. Now, since the trade was executed at a slightly different point than where I thought it would be executed, I can adjust my tool to that point, and the targets and stops adjust automatically. Once everything is in order, I remove the fixed ATM so that I can freely move my targets and my stop loss. Finally, my trade ends very well. Before finishing the tutorial, I wanted to clarify that for safety, when you close your NinjaTrader and open it again, absolutely all tools will become simple mode. You must activate Plus Mode or Pro Mode when you want any of your advanced risk-reward tools to begin functioning with special features. I hope that this tool is useful to you, and for any questions, we will be monitoring the chat on our website, brunomezza.com. Regards, traders.